Quiet night tonight, Sunday. Things will be hopping again as the Blazers play their final home preseason game against the Jazz. 6 o'clock start. Hope to see you out at Toyota Center for that one. And then things begin for real on Wednesday the 28th as Anthony Davis and the Pelicans come to town. 844-CITY, trailblazers.com, places to go for all of your Blazers ticket needs. Anytime we have a chance to visit with this gentleman on the program, we are always privileged to do so. From the Portland Tribune, the Dean of Portland Sports Media, Kerry Eggers. And Kerry, thank you for making the time to come on in. And 20 years ago today, the opening of what we now know as the Toyota Center, then the Rose Garden, not for a Blazer event, but I didn't notice until today what actually happened that very night. Dana Carvey coming in for a special invite event. David Stern was here. Paul Allen was here. It was a bunch of dignitaries in the audience, but that was the very first event in what we now know as a building that I think has held its own pretty well over 20 years.
And I'd forgotten that, but I was there, and it was a great event, and the building has held its own. It's still a beautiful. My only regret is that we don't have NHL alongside NBA. It'd be a lot of fun to have both.
Yeah, and in some cities, of course, they also have the chance to have a baseball stadium nearby where all the stadiums are kind of close to one another. But you can remember and take us back to the time that even the building was being put together, and there are people that say to this day, without the financial contribution of Mr. Allen, this building doesn't get put together.
That's absolutely true, and just getting the politics involved and getting the people to say, hey, let's get a new facility. We have to have this to keep up with the Joneses, and I give Paul Allen a lot of credit. You know, I remember that first night, the first Blazer game, Marshall Glickman was still, pulling his hair out, getting the bleachers set up. Some of the seats were not in, and it was a crazy night. I remember that.
That first game, Tone, do you have any memories of that on November the 3rd of 1995? I mean, Dana Carvey did a great job on October 13th, 1995, wowing everybody when he was a hot item. But November 3rd, 1995, the Blazers opened up the season against a brand new team in the NBA at that time, the Vancouver Grizzlies.
Was that the opening night?
That was opening night.
At the Rose Garden? Really?
Yeah, things didn't go so well for the home team.
For the home team? Because, the other team, well, I don't know how we went for the home team. I can only speak for how it went for the road team. It went great for the road team. I mean, we could not have asked for any more. An expansion team coming in, a team that had made the playoffs for so many years in a row, a championship caliber team, and we marched right in here and dispatched them in proper order.
The Blazers managed only 80 points that night, 92-80. The Grizzlies.
Do you know why that happened, Wheels?
Big time defense by you.
The glove was on the court, the big glove. Gary Payton was known as the glove. He was like the large version. I was the double XL version of the glove.
So you were no nephew for Uncle Cliffy that night then?
No. I was not his nephew. You know what? Cliff and I go back way before my NBA days. He's a Buffalo native. My older brother played for the Buffalo Bills when Cliff was still living there. So when he would come home in the summers, I would go visit my brother and we would play. And he would absolutely kick my tail. And being from the South, Wheels, we don't let go of stuff very easily. So from that day forward, I'll never forget, he not only beat me, but he talked trash the whole time he was beating me.
I'll say this about Uncle Cliffy. He was the most versatile big man the Blazers have ever had.
It's hard to argue that point, but I held it against him.
Took it to him that
it wasn't even that. I did that with a lot of players who, when I was in high school and wasn't the player I became, when they were beating me, I took that to heart, and it was a driving force for me. And when I got to the NBA and got a chance to play against those guys, I didn't take it for granted. I was out for blood every time me and Cliff played.
So now, would you say you defended Cliff most of that night?
I did, and I know he had a big night.
33 points and 13 rebounds.
Yeah, but you know what? You got to look at his field goal percentage.
I don't have that.
And you got to look at who won the game.
Well, yeah, there's no doubt. You had bragging rights at the end.
Wheels would like to see. He would have been happy if Cliff had 10 points and Portland won.
Yeah.
See, I was all about the team. It was my help side defense. See, I was shutting everybody else down. Wheels. See, he doesn't know. You wouldn't.
You guys were gonna let him get his points, but nobody else is gonna give you a chance.
You know what? It's funny. That was one of those nights. I can remember coming in and we pull up, and it was at the time the annex garage wasn't built. So when we pulled up, it was dirt, and they had little wooden sheets of wood, and you had to walk along the sheets because it was all dirt still. I mean, this was they were just finishing this thing up.
There was a lot of stuff that wasn't completed.
21,000. 398. So the seating capacity has changed and has, I think, become more intimate over the years.
Wheels, at one time, it was bigger than that. It was 23,000. They took about 2,000 seats out after about 3 or 4 years.
Wow. And there are those that say that as great a building as it is for basketball, that some say the sightlines are even better for hockey, which is why the folks that, even those that love the Winterhawks, those that have always wanted to have an NHL team here, always say that it would be perfect for the NHL.
I think it would, and I think the fans would love it. We need another, as much as we love the Blazers, I think we need another of the major 4 sports here.
And it's interesting, it was that time that things came close to getting the Penguins at that one juncture when they were thinking of leaving Pittsburgh, and at the last incident, Mary Lemieux saved the team there. And I don't sense over the years, and you can clarify this, I don't sense we've been that close to baseball. I mean, I know we've had flirtations with it, but it doesn't seem like there ever was a thought of a franchise coming or a stadium about to be built. That we never got that close with that.
No, Lynn Ashbrook's group is continuing to keep the dreams alive, but it's not very close. I think with Chris McGowan in the seat for the Blazers, the chances for hockey are better. But right now, the price to get an expansion team or to get in is about, I think it's $450 million. It's just a little bit too much.
Wow. Well, you know what? I don't know about all that hockey stuff. I want to talk about what's happening right now. What we do have, and what we do have is a very young Trailblazers team. And, granted, it's the preseason, Kerry, but when you look at what this team has been able to do, how do you grade their play so far in the preseason?
First of all, I was listening to you guys as I was coming in, and you were talking about the things, the length and a lot of the things they have. But the youth is the thing that really stands out. I don't think we've ever had I can't think of a younger team. There's nobody over 23 or 4 years old other than Gerald Henderson, 25 I should say, because that's what Damian. Gerald Henderson, who probably won't start this season on the active list, right? And then Chris Kaman. So, I mean, they're going to fight that all year. And I agree with you on one thing. They're going to get better. You're going to see a different team in March that you saw in November. So if there's going to be some growing pains, I think they'll win some games. They're going to surprise some people, but they're also going to go through some tough times, I think.
Tone has an interesting theory, and I guess we'll find out in time if he's right. He doesn't necessarily think you're going to need to win as many games to get one of the top 8 spots in the West, because the teams that didn't make the playoffs in the West last year are going to be better. So you're not going to maybe have as many easy nights as you did against the non-playoff teams. So he's saying that maybe even 44 wins could get you into the 8th spot in the West, whereas in the past you probably had to be closer to 48. I don't know if that's going to be true, but I do sense that Utah, Sacramento, Minnesota, these teams that didn't make the playoffs are going to be tougher, especially on their home floors. I think that they're going to be tougher to beat this year than they were in the past.
Well, and I think there's a lot of parity there around from 8 to maybe 12, 13. Now, you look at the Lakers, that might be the team. That might be the worst team in the conference.
Yeah, they could be.
But everybody else, you're right. I don't know about Minnesota, but they've got some talent there too. So, but we've had great parity in the West in the last 4 or 5 years anyway. So I don't know that it's going to make I still think you're going to have to win 45 games or so to make the playoffs.
And that sounds about right. The thing that I think people get lost in is, when you talk about the West, and it's not the top of the West that we're talking about. We're not talking about San Antonio and Golden State and Houston. We're talking about the Dallas Mavericks, the Pelicans, teams that the Blazers on any given night are going to be able to sneak up on, that the Suns are going to be able to sneak up on.
Another one.
So when you start talking about the 8th spot, that's the position that I'm talking about. Now, to get to number 4, number 5, you might need 56 wins. But to get to number 8, I think 44, 45 is about the legitimate number, and that is way down from what we've seen in the Western Conference in the last few years.
And then it's sad. You look at the Eastern Conference, and
22.
It just looks like Cleveland's gonna have a clear path, and who the second best team in the East is. It's up for debate, but I think there's probably pretty good separation right now between 1 and 2 in the East, and whoever finishes 8th in the East is probably going to be. They could have a pretty sad record, which has been the case the last few years.
It's a long time. It's incredible how long the West has dominated. You would think the balance of power would shift at some point. So far, it hasn't even come close to that.
Do you think there's any chance that the NBA, they've already made strides this year where they went away from division records counting. Do you think there's ever a time in the NBA where you go to just straight seeding?
No, because I don't. I think they'll always have the top 8 in the West and the top 8 in the East, and then I just don't see it being the record. One of the problems with that is you don't have a balanced schedule. The West teams have it tougher. They got to play the West teams more often,
right.
So you'd have to have a balanced schedule, and because of travel, I don't think they'd ever do that.
As you look at covering sports these days, Kerry, I mean, I'm curious about. I always like to ask you about, how things have changed over the years, and obviously everybody's into social media now, and you almost have to be, whether you're a reporter or whether you're a broadcaster or whether you're a player or a coach. It seems like just to kind of keep up with the Joneses, you have to take part in that. But how has social media changed in the way that maybe there are so many things that are out there? I just saw a tweet before we went on the air about Lamar Odom found in a brothel in Nevada and is fighting for his life or something. I mean, these kind of things. It just seems like there's no secrets anymore. And if you do something that maybe doesn't reflect very well on you or your team or your family, it's going to get out there. And I wonder if that makes it. Do people, are they on guard a little bit more when they are part of interviews, because so much that can be said and discovered maybe comes back to haunt them in some cases?
Yeah, I think that's true. I don't know that social media is the reason for that, but I do think the immediacy of the business right now. When I started, the newspaper, you wrote the story, and the next day somebody would pick it up and read it. Now they know on not only 11 o'clock news, but on Twitter or Facebook or something. So you're right. It's changed everything. I think most of it's for the good. Some of it, the thing that bothers me is there doesn't seem to be the credibility necessary anymore. You can throw anything you want out there. You don't have to verify it, and then people take it as gospel when sometimes it's not true.
You should not talk about Stephen A. Smith like that.
Yeah, well, he's just one of the prime examples.
Oh, he is, and it's interesting. The other thing that has changed in terms of the NBA landscape, it certainly seems like to me, is whereas once we as players, we only had the team to get our message out. It seems like now the players have direct access to their fans, and so maybe you don't see as much interaction between the team and player as they did when I was playing.
Yeah, and what's the name of the Jeter's site, the Players
Tribune?
I mean, that's been a vehicle for the players to get out their word. They can write their own stories, but I still think the traditional media gives you the best overall look at what's happening. We're there on a daily basis or close to it, and I still think that we serve a useful purpose.
Jason Quick was on this very program a week ago talking about why he shifted over to Comcast Sportsnet, and said he was a little nervous about some of the changes that he saw in the newspaper business. And you've seen some changes over the years as well. Do you wonder about that as well? And you've branched out and done a lot of extra things too, but I still always hope there's still room for the daily newspaper, but maybe I'm old-fashioned in that respect. I don't know. But the changes that you see, do you worry about the future of the newspaper business?
Sure. But I'm with you. I like the printed product. What worries me is most of the young people are on their cell phones. That's how they get their whatever their news is. So, but we're going to keep up with it, whether it's digital age, or a print age. Now, the Pamplin Enterprises, we've done pretty well the last few years. Mr. Pamplin's bought several more newspapers. A lot of them are weeklies, and maybe the daily newspaper will go away, but I don't think the printed version of the newspaper will ever go away.
The thing that you mentioned, how young people get their news off their cell phones, but it's actually one step further than that, Kerry. It seems like they get their news off the Twitter feed. How can you get news in 140 characters?
Well, one thing that I've used Twitter for the last few years is to put the link to your story, and so they can hit that thing and then read your story. So that's been a real useful tool. We do that on Facebook too. You're right though, 140 characters is nothing. Who said it at 140 anyway? Why can't it be 300?
You wonder how they settled at
Let's change that, huh?
Settled at that. Yeah. But like last week, a perfect example of how it can best be used. You broke the story about the sale of Pumpkin Ridge on Twitter. So that's something where your connections can come in handy, and rather than wait for the next day
and we have
to print something that you can have something more immediate.
Absolutely, and really, there's no time to write the story usually, because the way news travels, boom, you got to get it out.
Okay. All right. We're with Kerry Eggers, the Dean of Portland Sports Media from the Portland Tribune, and we've got more we want to discuss with Kerry.
Hey.
Yes.
Oh, I just got news wheels, just FYI. Uncle Cliff was 11 of 29 from the field.
Wow. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you were right. His shooting percentage, he had to take a lot of shots. 29 shots to get 33 points.
And killed his team.
And apparently he didn't help them too much if they only scored 80 points. That was a tough start for the Blazers that year, by the way. That loss must have shocked them. They did win the next game, but then lost 2 straight after that.
Does it have Tones' statistical line in there, Wheels?
We need to find a box score from that game. Yeah. So if we can find what Cliff did, I know we can find what Tone did. So let's get to that. We'll come back and discuss that as we resume Trailblazers Courtside.